Hi, my name is Elizabeth McPherson, and this is my introduction video to educational leadership. So, a little bit about myself. I'm a military spouse. We've lived in Minnesota, Florida, and now we are at Fort Riley, Kansas. I have a 5-year-old daughter. This is my 10th year teaching in both math and special education. I've taught in every state that we've lived in 4 different schools, which is kind of a good opportunity. And my ultimate goal is hopefully to be a special education administrator. So I enjoy running, boxing, and playing basketball for fun. I like math. I love donuts, especially at fairs, and I'm an avid crafter. So I like doing projects and kind of being creative. So I have my bachelor's in mathematics and secondary education, as well as my master's in special education. I taught at a small private school in Minnesota, Christian Heritage Academy, when I first started teaching. I was their math and special education teacher. Once I got my master's in special education, I transitioned to Academy of Whole Learning. It is a private school for kids on the autism spectrum or with related disabilities. And I had um, a groom of high schoolers, and I was also the STEM and math specialist. When we PCS to Florida, I got a job teaching high school math at Largo High School. And then back here in Kansas, I went back to the special education world, and I am a behavior specialist in the self-contained behavior program at Junction City Middle School. So looking at the articles, the 3 different types of mindset. So the first mindset, all students can grow, I definitely agree with. I think as a special education teacher, this is kind of my sweet spot, is finding those areas kids need to grow and then really pursuing that growth with them. So I think it's really important in this kind of element to think about growth not as kind of some equivalent to a standard. It's not like an 8th grader has to do 8th grade math to be growing. I think growth is relative to that starting point. So wherever the kid is at, to watch them grow to that next level, even if it's years and years behind where they should be, to recognize any level of growth. And I think especially in the special education world, it's important to notice that staying still can still be growing. A lot of my kids typically regress, and so being still is sometimes is growth. Social capital and teamwork will outperform individual talent. I do agree with this. I think professional development and collaboration is really key to professional success. That strength in numbers mentality. If you're not using the people in your building to grow professionally, it's kind of a waste. And then happiness is a choice. I agree and disagree with this. I agree with that kind of mentality and mindset that you need to kind of be positive, but I like to use the word joy. I think joy is a choice. The choice to kind of be content and assured in whatever position you're at. I don't think that means you're happy all the time or that you have to be happy. I think, again, as a special education teacher, I don't know that we always have a ton of control over those kind of emotions sometimes, but I think joy kind of can be a choice. So the 5 types of disposition. So confidence, definitely agree that this is a key element. Believe in your calling. If you want to be a teacher and you believe you're in the right place at the right time, be confident about that. Being a risk taker and decisive. I think I agree within reason. I think it's important to understand that there is accountability that follows every risk and decision. And while it's important to take those risks, regardless, it's important to note that fear of failure is not the same as the consequence of the failure. So being afraid of failing is one thing, but to not consider what consequences might come if you do fail, I think is kind of reckless. So sense of humor, again, I agree within reason. I think it's important, but it's really kind of important to know your audience to be appropriate when using humor. Empathetically assertive is very, very powerful. I think leadership takes leading. It's important to lead rather than gather. I think there's a lot of people who can get a group of people together, but they're not really doing anything. They're not kind of making any change or movement. And leadership is about making that change in leadership, and that comes through that empathetical assertiveness. And I agree with being a learner. I am on my second master's degree, so I definitely think that education and professional development is a very important thing. So 3 types of practices. The first one, focus and prioritizing. I do agree. Saying no is something that I think a lot of people in our field struggle with. It's important to prioritize your day and then monitor those priorities. What was a priority this week might not have to be a priority next week. So to continue to assess that. Examine feedback by data. I think my math brain and my special education brain love this one the most. Make data-driven choices. Collect data, keep track of everything as much as you can. And I think feedback is crucial, but it's very meaningless if it's not backed up. So that data really helps us do that. And then emotional intelligence, making every interaction count, reading the room, and creating a culture of mutual respect. So the 8 principles of ethical leadership. I think I agree with almost all of them. So personal courage, again, believe in your calling, use your education, knowledge, and skill to drive the change you know that you want. Public interest ahead of self, I definitely agree that leadership is about magnifying the voices of those who follow you, not standing up to speak louder than them. So self-control, self-discipline, and integrity, I definitely agree. I think that one thing I thought that the article made a good point is kind of recognizing that these are really ethical components. It's having that self-control, self-discipline, and integrity brings you to ethical leadership. Task and employee centeredness, I definitely mostly agree with this. I think it's very important to use the skills of your team, but not at the expense of not developing new skills in them. Recognize talent, definitely important to allow staff and students to be seen and valued in the school culture. Think if, a kid turns in a paper and only 1 out of 10 are right, if you really emphasize the one they got right first and maybe more than the 9 they got wrong, they're going to work really hard to get another one right for you next time. So requiring high ethics from everyone, I definitely agree that it is important to do and require those who you're leading to do the right thing, even when no one is looking. Sensitivity and understanding. I think this definitely in our culture right now with all the turmoil that's happening is very important. This is requiring you to listen and learn and understand. Inclusiveness, I definitely mostly agree with this, but I think that there's kind of a caveat that there are going to be some opportunities in leadership that it's not appropriate to be inclusive, that just kind of a leadership choice or decision or whatever the situation might be. And I think that it's important to recognize that some people don't desire to be included in that leadership model. And it's important to kind of get people out of their comfort zone, but make sure that it's appropriate and desired. So I definitely think that some strengths of mine are that every student can grow. Again, as a special education teacher, I kind of think that this is the basis of what I kind of wake up and do every day is look for those areas of continued growth for my students. I think I do display that empathetic assertiveness is kind of getting on the same level with everyone on my team and participating with them and being a voice on behalf of them. And then I do think that requiring those ethical choices and decision making is a strength of mine. I definitely think that sometimes it's hard for me to find that happiness. I kind of get bogged down to that like teacher's lounge conversation, kind of so to speak. So definitely not one of my strengths. Decisiveness is also not one of my strengths. I tend to kind of mull over decisions a little bit longer than maybe I should sometimes. And I definitely am working as a leader on my discipline. I like to kind of be a go with the flow kind of person, and sometimes that kind of isn't the way that leadership needs to be, and there needs to be some more discipline and routine and structure to what I'm doing. So some ways that this might drive change for me are to practice clear decision-making skills, work on setting the tone in my workplace, and engage in collaboration to kind of work on that discipline. So this supports the success and well-being of all students just by enhancing the climate and culture of schools. I think when we participate in these mindset, disposition, and ethical leadership elements, we are creating an environment that people want to be at, that teachers want to teach in, that parents want to send their kids to. And anytime the environment is based on people who are choosing to be there, there's always a benefit to success for students. When you get into a school where it's kind of like the only job teachers can have, or they're tenured so they're there, or kind of just that like I'm here because I have to be attitude, there's definitely not the highest level of student success. So again, I look forward to this course. I look forward to learning from all of you, and I hope that this is just the beginning. Thank you.